Thank you kindly to the person who posted Abrego Garcia's birth date. All that was known was July 1995. Now the 26th seems to be the correct date. And so here is his day chart. No time of birth is available, which means we don't know what is rising or what is culminating. We simply have all his planet positions. Plus, the moon, you can see, is going to be in Cancer regardless. It's just that it could be anywhere between 17 degrees 18 minutes and 29 degrees 26 minutes. Either way, though, you can see right away correlations reflecting what is happening to him because, for one, he's on his Saturn return. Saturn returning tends to correlate with big, weighty psychological states and/or events. And probably even more worrying in terms of something really difficult happening. You have transiting Pluto up here in early Aquarius, opposing his Mercury and his Sun, most especially now his Sun. And then finally, you could also drag in pressure from the transiting Eris because it's in this region here, squaring close to where Venus is, but probably worse would be the Uranus cycle, which also is opposing toward his Pluto. Now, the thing is, though, having said that, right away you're struck by the fact that this chart also has a lot of assets in that you see the grand trine formed by Saturn, Venus, Moon, and then Pluto in the water signs, and the sextile that the Pluto-Saturn part of the grand trine makes to the Uranus-Neptune up here. Now, it is true that the Uranus-Neptune do oppose in this direction, especially toward the Venus and potentially toward the Moon. So it's a bit of a mixed situation, but overall, this kind of energy is very helpful toward getting you out of jams, such as this. And then, of course, we have to look at his situation and how does this fit in with, most especially, the individual most responsible for his situation, even though he would try to shift it somewhere else. The fact is, this is happening to him because of this guy. And so when you see that his planets, meaning Abrego's planets, become quite a problem for the Orange Menace, because you see that the Saturn return that he's experiencing, Abrego is, that's because it's in those degrees currently, but those are degrees that he owns his whole life. In other words, when you take this chart and project it to Trump's, that's what Trump is experiencing, meaning here is Trump's transit, which is currently squaring his Sun and Moon, which separately has led him into this tariff debacle because the 8th sign is the sign of tariffs, etc. Main point is, Abrego's Saturn squares Trump's Sun and Moon. Then we see that Abrego's natal Pluto is down here in Trump's chart, squaring his Mars. That's another problem that the menace has to look out for. And the Mars in Abrego's chart, you project it over here in Libra, and so then it challenges the infamous axis Hollywood T-square formed by Neptune, Eris, and Mercury. So that adds still more pressure. And now if we take these two planets here at the top of the kite, Uranus and Neptune, those find their way Trump's chart over here, opposing his Saturn-Venus. Translation to all this is a heck of a lot of square energy from one chart to the other. And if you see oppositions like this in a really vulnerable place to Trump's 12th, Saturn-Venus, from these two, the Saturn square to the Sun-Moon, the Mars triggering the T-square, then you can even add, for added spice, Abrego's Black Moon is right on Trump's natal moon. And indeed, you link his Black Moon position in doing so to Trump's nodes as well. This tends to bring people together in some kind of faded way, something they have to work out. I mean, clearly, because Trump is responsible for this guy currently languishing in a El Salvadorian prison, apparently without any kind of evidence or proof or anything else. Now, the word out of the administration is that they're not going to bring him back. They're essentially defying the Supreme Court. Pam Bondi said today that he's never going to come back. However, we also know that it's being transacted in court. The judge in charge is threatening contempt. And one wonders if Trump will relent or something will happen to change the situation. Now, when we look at that, well, first of all, as I say, with a chart like this, especially you look at Saturn, which tends to be often one of the most punishing. If Saturn at a person's birth is part of squares and oppositions, and this happens to them, that's an immediate red flag. But it is not. It's part of a grand trine, it's part of sextiles. Indeed, I said that Pluto, in the transit in Pluto, is opposing his Sun Mercury, but Pluto itself is also a very well integrated planet. And so you start to wonder if this guy isn't going to get a dose of some kind of luck, something that will turn in his direction. And here's where you see that, for example, the Neptune, which here I'm showing it in Trump's chart, this is the transiting Neptune out there in the sky. In Abrego's case, you go over here, and then you see that what it's doing is, over here in early Aries, it's trining his, well, for now, his Mercury. It won't go any further than that, in that you see here with the ephemeris, Neptune, the whole of between approximately now and all the way into November, it's in early Aries, so therefore it's trining. This is really helpful. This is part of the reason why he has so much support from the public. Neptune correlates, among many other things, with compassion, with celebrity, public support in your direction. And so that's one major asset. The other helpful thing is that Saturn will leave these degrees and not be right on the return. The Pluto is a little more complicated because Pluto, if you see it here, it's pretty much opposed the whole year and even into next year. So the way I feel like this is likely to turn out is either in fairly short order, such as, for example, in this region here in the summer, because he then would have, yes, he'd have the Pluto opposing, but as I say, the Pluto is not a super nasty planet, but he has Saturn trining and Neptune trining, both of those in quite a swath in here. And if not, if it turns out that he is not liberated at that time, then the likely thing to happen would be that he'd have to wait till the next opportunity, meaning the Saturn returns again in here at the end of the year, and then next year this activity here returns one more time after the retrograde, and he gets trine energy. Well, the thing is, you look at a chart like this, and you would say something like, an event like this, provided, of course, that something incredibly, horribly terminal doesn't happen, such as the fact that, let's face it, he's in a prison. He is now, I believe, a major threat to this guy in the sense that I think one of the biggest problems we're dealing with here is the Orange Abomination is so conscious of his image, of looking bad, of what the media can do. What's he going to do? Release this guy, figure out a way to release this guy, and then what? Get him to sign a non-disclosure agreement? Well, that wouldn't look good. And if he doesn't do it, this guy will probably be on TV, on YouTube, and it's going to make the administration look bad. So that's really the key problem. However, if, let's say that his birth time doesn't complicate this in any way to make things super bad for this chart, I honestly don't see how exactly, perhaps by putting Saturn right on the ascendant or Pluto right on the ascendant, or something to really intensify the potential dangerous energy of planets like Saturn and Pluto. But this chart, to me, has the feeling of an event that happens to a person that becomes incredibly important toward the rest of their life in a positive way, because Saturn issues, when they happen, if you can wait them out, sort through the situation, then they can become really supportive for many, many years when you have a Saturn like this. Saturn gets all kinds of support here in this chart. And so, having looked at this, I'm actually relatively optimistic despite the stance the administration seems to be taking, and the fact that I think there's a really good chance that the overall effect of this event is going to be quite a problem for this guy because of the way these charts interact. Indeed, if you think about it, if he were to die in prison or something were to happen to him, I think it would be a huge problem for Trump and for the GOP and for the Trump administration. But at the moment, I'm not seeing just how they avoid the negativity that is likely to go their way. But I suppose, this guy may take the option of not saying anything, maybe cutting a bargain like that. That I don't know what to say about, because it is possible. It's possible that that would happen as well. But bottom line, I would say that there is reasonably good energy here, quite good in fact, toward a good outcome. In fact, I'll mention as the final thing that the other thing you notice is that Jupiter is currently transiting down here in Gemini. Next, it's going to go through all the Cancer planets, although, to be fair, that's where, to reach these Cancer planets, part of it would be depending on where the moon is. But if you look here, Jupiter can't get even to the earliest part of that moon until later in the summer of this year. Then, one way or the other, though, by the end of the year here, Jupiter is right on the Venus at minimum in here. And then next summer it goes into Leo. But the point being that you put Jupiter in here, in this region, anywhere, it triggers the Grand Trine. This is really positive energy. It is really, really helpful. So there are multiple points of optimism in regard to this man. And I'm really glad that this is what I found when I looked at his chart.